Hello, my name is Lorene Allen. I am with Merrimack Citizens for Clean Water. I've been a resident here since 1985 and very involved in all things PFAS. So as you know, briefly in Merrimack, we don't need the story, but in 2016 we all learned that the water we believed to be safe for decades, in fact, contained PFAS compounds. At that point, the investigation began and 2 of our public wells were closed. Several private wells were identified as contaminated, and over the last 8 years in this investigation, as health science has evolved and become incorporated in water standards, what we have seen is this investigation grow and grow and grow. It is now at the point where it encompasses 5 communities: Merrimack, Bedford, Litchfield, Londonderry, parts of Manchester, parts of Hudson. Amherst has some issues with PFAS. Southern New Hampshire is in trouble. So here we are, this community with a great sign outside that says it takes a village. We really believe that here. And we're faced with a situation back then that we had no experience with, no point of reference with, as we all know. And it was really up to us to solve the problem. What do we need? So we know at this point that all 6 of our public water wells, which have been remediated, amazing work by the Merrimack Village District, and private wells in communities total over 4,000 have been tested, and more than half of those don't meet the New Hampshire MCLs. So it goes on and on and on. The more they're testing in this area, the more they're finding. So this problem isn't just a local problem. We know the state has put immense resources. Last I heard, $156 million New Hampshire has spent on PFAS investigations and all the issues that our state has to do. Our federal government has been also scrambling to look at regulatory, because the fact is this is a class of chemicals that are hazardous substances. They're toxic, and somehow they evaded designation for more than 20 years. So this is long overdue. And health-based standards are what needs to guide safety. Everyone in this town who's been passionately and actively involved, and people out of the town also in this issue, understands that health is pivotal to all. So local, state, and federal partnerships are crucial to solving this problem, not just for resources and information and technology, but because we can't do this alone. We know what that feels like to feel really hopeless and even abandoned at times in the beginning of this. So Merrimack the good news is we are a shining star for the nation and the state because we have made immense gains. We were ahead of the state MCLs because residents here shared information, looked around and said whatever was happening in their communities, in their own homes, and what they were hearing, anecdotal as it was of concern. We see the impacts, and we are working, and we have successfully turned off the tap in many ways, especially in our public water. So that being said, I am thrilled to introduce today EPA Region 1 Administrator David Cash, who is here to share an immense announcement. The first, I hope, of many that we will be hearing this year for the EPA. There's a lot of things in the pipeline that are very exciting and very much needed. So I will welcome him and have him let you know what's going on federally. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Laureen. It's a pleasure to be here today to make this announcement. And, in some ways it feels celebratory because it's been a long time coming, as you mentioned, but in many other ways it's incredibly serious what we're talking about here that impacts people's lives in very fundamental ways. And I just want to note on something that you just said. Your town, New Hampshire, you are not abandoned. We are working hand in hand. The EPA, federal government, is working hand in hand with cities and towns and communities, water districts, utilities, private well owners all across the country. And today's announcement shows the magnitude of the work that we're doing. As Laureen mentioned, I'm the EPA Region 1 Regional Administrator. Region 1 are the 6 New England states and the 10 federally recognized tribes in New England. We've worked closely on many of these issues with the fantastic congressional delegation that you have here in New Hampshire, Senators Shaheen and Hassan and Congressman Pappas and Congresswoman Custer have all stepped up in this regard. I think, as you know, they would have liked to have been at these events that are happening, but of course are in D.C. Today in session. So I know some of their staff are here today, so please bring back to them the gratitude that we have for the work that they've done for the people of New Hampshire and for all over the country. We know that they've been leaders here. And also the state. I communicate quite a bit with Commissioner Bob Scott, and I know they've been very proud of the leadership that they've taken in monitoring in particular. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of monitoring sites, well before many states even did any. And they were not hiding their head in the sands. And that's really crucially important here, particularly with a toxic substance like this. And we know that PFAS has emerged as this concern in every state in New England, all across the country. And it is a topic that I get asked about most in all of the meetings that I have with other state agencies, with community activists, with parents, with municipal officials and members of Congress. PFAS is always at the top of the list. And the bottom line, water is essential, right? It's safe drinking water is fundamental to healthy people, thriving communities, and we rely on drinking water from the moment we get up and make a cup of coffee or a cup of tea to when we brush our teeth at night. And we know that PFAS is prevalent in the environment. In fact, I think we're just going to keep finding it more and more and in greater concentrations and in places we wouldn't expect it to. We are very much at the beginning of this. And we know that it has long-term health impacts. We know that it can cause cancer. We know that it can impact other illnesses, cardiac illnesses. It can decrease the quality of life and result in deaths. And we know that PFAS exposure during critical life stages such as pregnancy or early childhood can also result in long-term adverse health impacts. And we know that PFAS pollution can disproportionately impact small, disadvantaged rural communities already facing environmental contamination from lots of different sources: air, water, land. So today, this is a huge step. For someone who's been involved in PFAS for a long time, I also happen to be at EPA one of the co-chairs of the PFAS Council. Administrator Regan launched the PFAS Council early on in his tenure, and there's always been co-chairs, one from headquarters in Washington and one from the regions. I took over the co-chair position about 2 years ago, so really following what's going on both within EPA, across all of our divisions, air, water, Superfund, and across other agencies. Department of Defense, for example, has been an agency that we have collaborated with. And today, what has been announced is establishing a nationwide, legally enforceable drinking water standard to protect communities. So, huge deal, focusing on 6 of the PFAS and PFOA compounds and setting a very protective standard. This is a signature action, and the projections are that this will reduce exposure for approximately 100 million people living in the United States and in our territories, and prevent thousands of deaths and prevent tens of thousands of illnesses. And since as we've gone through it, as I'm sure many folks here can attest to, talking with water utilities, municipal water suppliers, this new rule is achievable and it's implementable. And you'll hear success stories here. We've heard them all over the country, all over the region. I know that Andrea Amico is not joining us today, but a year and a half ago I met with her and Senator Shaheen down on the Pease base, and just remarkable what they've done there. And that is being replicated all over the country. We know that it's achievable. We know that drinking waters will be able to implement these new requirements with unprecedented federal funding. And again, thank you very much, Congress, for the bipartisan infrastructure law, where so much of this funding is coming from. And this funding is available for control technologies that are already in use. And we know that this is now a signal to engineers and chemists and physicists all over the world that we're ready for innovation and entrepreneurship. And this rule also provides flexibility for extra time, for compliance, and enables utility companies to keep our water safe from the contaminants that are identified in the Safe Drinking Water Act. And we continue to work with communities, the agency, on all manner of PFAS. This is just one of many efforts that we're making. The agency released, as I mentioned, the PFAS, through the PFAS Council, the PFAS Strategic Roadmap in 2021, 3 overarching goals: restricting PFAS from entering the environment in the first place, remediating or cleaning up PFAS where it's found and holding polluters accountable, and researching PFAS to understand how we could more strategically address public health and environmental risks. So this, what we're announcing today, is a cornerstone to this whole holistic approach that we've taken, and it's a pleasure to be up here having this conversation with you. So thank you so much for the invitation. Thank you, Lori.
Thank you so much. And as you said, it's a pivotal cornerstone. I don't do this every day, excuse me. I just want to take a moment before I introduce various people here who are going to give remarks about what this means to them and some of the work that they've been working on a state and local level, because it's a piece of it. It's holistic and integrative and very, very important. In the room today, we have many, many people who have done so much on this, and I want to recognize, first, I really want to recognize Superintendent Ron Miner from Merrimack Waterworks, who's right over here, and Wolfram Von Schoen, who I would never have the pleasure of having met if it wasn't for this, who's done immense work as a water commissioner. They have moved mountains. They tuned in as community members. They realized early in the game that there was a problem here. You know, we decided as a community not to wait for the science to prove it so we could defend it, or state had to do that because they had to defend it legally, but to really step in and protect families, children, and all of our residents, pets too, right? So thank you, MVD. You were just heroes here. Kathy Corky is here from Sierra Club. She's been a tremendous asset. We have various representatives sitting here: Bill Boyd, Janine Nodder, Maureen Mooney. Those are the Merrimack ones, right? I think other people are in Concord today. They have co-sponsored and worked on policy and legislation to address this in many ways, from funding to, regulatory is hard in New Hampshire. We're a statutory state, but we're working on that. Chris Bandasian is here, who is the chair of the HB 737 PFAS Health Commission. We meet this Friday. You can catch us on the web, wherever we are. I don't know. As David said, we have representatives from Senator Shaheen's office, Senator Hassan's office, and our dear Congressman Pappas's office, who truly have been national champions. Or Senator Chandley is here. She has sponsored bills. We have some in the pipework that are very important and understands, is an Amherst resident, what PFAS means. Representative Megan Murray, Suzanne Vale. Anyone I've forgotten, there's many, many people. It takes more than a village, and I just wanted to really acknowledge all of you, because who we are up here is speaking for little pieces of this. There are so many more people. So without further ado, as they say, I'd like to introduce you to Michael Strand. Michael is the citizen representative for Bedford on the PFAS Health Commission. He is a father and a resident in Bedford and cares very, very deeply about this issue. And let's hear from him and what he has to say as to what this all means to him and anything else he'd like to say. Okay, Michael.
Thanks, Lorraine, and thanks for your leadership on this issue. So I will say that I have only come to this issue relatively recently, having only served on the commission for a couple of years now. So I first want to thank everyone else on the commission, Chris Bandasian, and everyone here today for your leadership in truly creating an environment and an opportunity where everybody has a seat at the table and can be stakeholders in defending our own basic environmental rights. I want to thank the EPA and the Biden administration and advocates everywhere across both towns and the state of New Hampshire for their courage in doing the right thing for New Hampshire residents, property owners, taxpayers, and most importantly, people. I also, again, would like to thank Congressman Pappas and Senator Shaheen for what I view as remarkable, if not exceptional, leadership on this issue in terms of bringing federal resources back to the state of New Hampshire to protect municipalities and people. I'll keep this brief. It is my hope that this new science-based action will empower the state of New Hampshire, municipalities, and residents to be able to protect ourselves, finally, in a way that our Constitution suggests should be guaranteed. The harsh reality, but simultaneous opportunity of this action, and I say this with full understanding of my company on this panel, many of whom I call friends, is that by the time we're done securing a future that guarantees clean water for our children and grandchildren, someday, we may not be sitting here to see it. But I think we have a commitment to the past and the present, and that leads us to realize an obligation to the future. And I think this is part of a broader effort to learn from the lessons of our mentors, our parents, our grandparents, in a way that will allow us to build a future worthy of our kids and our grandkids. And I think for me, that's what this is about. I want to thank you for your clarity on what I believe defines what the future of clean water will look like in New Hampshire and both the United States of America.
Dawn Provencher, who I would gander does not really need an introduction, our water commissioner. Take it away, Dawn.
Thank you, Laureen. I am Dawn Provencher. I'm with the Merrimack Village District. Most of you know about the Merrimack Village District. It's a kind of a private water company that's funded entirely by the customers. And in 2018, myself and Wolf got elected onto the board. We've been there through 2 terms, starting our 3rd term now. As Laureen indicated, back in 2016, 8 years ago, when we found out that there was PFAS in the drinking water, everyone got concerned, and we didn't really know what that meant. But through the local town advocacy of a small group of just town advocates here that did the research and looked into what the effect was and the studies that have been done, there was a lot of education that proceeded. A lot of those advocates subsequently ran for and were elected to state representatives and senators and MVD itself. So basically, in 2019, that education led to MVD customers proposing their own warrant article for treating the PFAS. And this was at a time when the EPA health advisory was at 70 parts per trillion. 2 of our wells had already been a source of a settlement agreement, and there was some funds provided for the construction of a treatment plant at 2 of those wells. That first plant went online in 2020. But in 2019, at the annual meeting, MVD had 4 additional wells that were below the 70 standard, but still had the presence between 20 and 40 ppt, parts per trillion, of PFOA. But because of that local advocacy, that education, it became apparent that none of the customers really wanted any PFAS in the water. And back in 2019, those petition warrant articles were put to a vote. And if my memory serves me correctly, I believe there were about 300 people in attendance at that annual meeting, which is a giant, actually, it's a large amount of people to attend an annual meeting. And if my memory serves me correctly, it was somewhere in the 290 votes were in favor of these PFAS treatment warrant articles. So that local advocacy really educated our local, everybody, officials, reps, and just our customers. Because of that, today I feel that these lowering of the MCLs is a vindication that thought process was a correct one. The PFAS limits have been going down all along. Later that same summer in 2019, the DES passed its own MCLs state level. This is after the warrant articles already passed. And we had to rely on our state legislature to codify those MCLs because there was a pushback, legal pushback on that. So again, that local advocacy in even the state reps educating other state reps in the rest of the state that weren't dealing with this issue. There was a lot of publicity going on, a lot of education going on, and it all kind of stemmed back from this roots right here in town. I firmly believe that. I just want to take the rest of the time I have here to thank the MVD customers for their patience and for their understanding of the importance of the matter. I want to thank the MVD staff, our consultants for their designs, rate impact studies, which were proven we did increase the rates because of the treatment plants, and they landed right in line basically with what those projections were in the 2019 warrant articles. So we had people tell us that this is unsustainable. It's not sustainable. There's no way you're going to be able to fund this. We're funding it, and actually we have some of the cleanest water in the state, if not New England and parts of the country. All of our distribution systems since the last treatment plant went online about a year ago, we've been essentially detecting non-detectable of 25 PFAS compounds that we test for on a quarterly basis in our distribution system. And that's what the customers wanted, and that's kind of what we've delivered. So I also want to thank the DES for their grant assistance, and all of the local reps, senators, town council, for all of their advocacy on bills and other vehicles that were implemented here to get us to where we are. And mostly I want to thank all of the local advocates from the start of this, and especially you, Laureen, for really kicking this off. And I know you've educated myself, and you're probably one of the single most people I can rely on for the most well-rounded PFAS knowledge that I know. So thank you.
Thank you, Don. Nancy Murphy is a town councilor. She is a state representative. And Nancy was right there from the very start, out there handing out flyers to collect people's health information so they could feel validated. And I will let her tell you what this means to her and some of the actions that have been taken and are in the works.
Great, thank you, Laureen. Good afternoon. Today is a good day. And those of us in the town of Merrimack and surrounding PFAS-contaminated communities who've been living in the midst of this public health crisis have been advocating for over 8 years. When I first learned of the PFAS contamination of our town's public wells in 2016, I was a 30-year resident living 2 miles from our local polluter, St. Cobain, a retired nurse, and mother of 6 children, 3 of whom were adopted. By 2018, I saw negative health impacts known to be associated with PFAS exposure in 4 of my unrelated children. My husband and father were diagnosed with 3 different cancers, and I'd become a founding member of Merrimack Citizens for Clean Water with the shared goal to educate the public and drive necessary policy change. DES designated the Merrimack area as the site of the largest environmental industrial disaster in New Hampshire's history. The lack of federal protections and inadequate state response to the widespread contamination issue impacting us inspired 3 of us to take our citizen advocacy efforts to the legislature to be the change we wish to see. Elected as a water warrior to the New Hampshire House of Representatives, first in 2018 and again in 2022, it has been my focus to draft and pass legislation that will protect New Hampshire citizens from the exposure and health harm risks that Merrimack and surrounding communities have already experienced, and to hold those responsible accountable. Though I'm proud of having drafted, passed, and serving on the state of New Hampshire's first 5-year 23-member PFAS commission, which I resubmitted this term and will hopefully be extended for another 5 years, that such action was and remains necessary is unfortunate. I feel the same way about HB 614, a bill I wrote in collaboration with New Hampshire DHHS that is funding the Merrimack Kidney Cancer Phase 3 feasibility study that's just beginning and has become necessary due to the 42% increased incidence of kidney cancer in the town of Merrimack. As a Merrimack Town Councilor, I've spearheaded the town's PFAS filtration rebate program initiative for residents whose private wells exceeded state PFAS MCLs. In 2018, the EPA came to Exeter, New Hampshire for what was then called a listening session to address PFAS and hear the concerns those of us in New Hampshire had about this lack of federal regulation related to these toxins. We shared our stories and expectations and have remained diligent in our efforts for the federal protections necessary since that time. I'm grateful that the EPA is here today with this positive news announcement. I appreciate the efforts of all involved to make it happen, and I implore you to not let this forward movement end here. This action will protect citizens across the nation from having to experience what those of us in highly PFAS impacted communities have had to contend with and will likely suffer from in terms of the negative health impacts that result. Until PFAS are regulated as a class and the voices of citizens are heard above the influence of lobbyists for manufacturers and polluters, we are not safe. Our federal government has the ability to protect our planet and its people, and we must continue to find the political will to do the right thing. I want to thank Administrator Cash for being here and bringing us some great news. I know I was president in North Carolina when the last announcement was made, and for Laureen for coordinating this. She's been spearheading this from day one, and I'm really grateful to be surrounded by comrades in arms, colleagues who have worked hand in hand, side by side, to do what we needed to do on a local level, on a state level, and to encourage the federal level to help us out. So really hoping that many other communities in the country are spared what we've been spared, and that lessons have been learned here, that we don't need to keep reinventing the wheel, and that today is the beginning of some wonderful forward movement. So thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Wendy Thomas is a New Hampshire state representative. She's a long-term resident. She is a private well owner in Merrimack, and she found out maybe 2 years into this investigation that her private well, which was not recognized as part of the contamination circle and the consent agreement initially, was highly contaminated at levels higher than most wells in Merrimack, and she sees the impacts and has worked very hard. New Hampshire water, for I think we all know, is groundwater, is most of our drinking water, and PFAS is not good in the ground. Go ahead, Wendy.
Thank you, Lorraine. As Lorraine said, my name is Wendy Thomas. I live in Merrimack, and I live 3 miles from St. Gobain, and we were told by the state that that was a safe distance. Turned out that that was not correct. Water flows and air blows. I live in an older neighborhood, and 4 of the houses on my street have private wells that are contaminated with PFAS. In house number 1, the dad has died of kidney cancer. In house number 2, the dad and the adult son have died of colon cancer. In house number 3, the dad is currently dying with stage 4 prostate cancer. It's moved to his bones. House number 4 is my house. My husband had a quadruple bypass at age 55 in 2019. In 2022, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I had my blood tested for PFAS chemicals, and it turns out I have 12 PFAS chemicals in my blood that are over the toxic limit that's allowed for humans. The doctors, my oncologist at Dartmouth-Hitchcock, is fully convinced that my cancer is related to PFAS. It may be too late. Well, it is definitely too late for the people on my street that have died, and it may be too late for some of us that are already sick. But this is not about us. As Michael pointed out, it is about the future. And make no mistake, this decision by the Biden administration will save lives. And that's the greatest reward that we could have had for our work. Now, what I've been doing up at the State House is I got a House resolution passed, and it's already been delivered to President Biden. The House resolution, it asks for oversight on the closure of St. Gobain and making sure that they're held accountable for remediation. I currently have a bill in the Senate that would require real estate agents to notify anyone who's buying property that PFAS is a possibility in the water. I had a bill, it got stopped, but if I'm reelected, I'm going to put it back in, that would require insurance companies to pay for preventive PFAS related health care and monitoring based on blood work triggering the care. This is a step forward, definitely a step forward. We've been waiting for this. We're all going to celebrate this, but this is not the end. There's still tremendous work to be done. We're here for it, and we're going to hold our polluters accountable. We're going to find funding so that those of us who are affected don't have to pay for this, and we are going to keep working for the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Karen Abel, I'm so glad you could join us. Karen is not from Merrimack. She's a considerably distance traveler today. Karen is a state representative. Karen is also chair of the New Hampshire Solid Waste Working Group. I'd heard of Karen for a while. She's put some bills in that were very important, and last year we finally met. Karen's work is getting at source reduction. Source reduction is really important. As I said, drinking water is groundwater primarily. When we list solid waste, consumer products, all the ways that PFAS gets into the environment. We know here, we've heard about it, air emissions leading to particulates that go into the ground and go into the water, discharging into the brooks, into the streams, inappropriate disposal of toxic chemicals, on and on and on. We know the industry impacts. Karen is going to talk with you a bit about some of the very exciting work. We have the Eyes on New Hampshire right now. We have reps in this room, including Representative Mooney and Representative Boyd, and Senator Chandley needed to leave us. She had to be in Concord presenting a bill. Also Nancy and Wendy, who are working very hard. Senator Denise Riccardi from Bedford also, to get this bill over the finish line. Karen, I'm so happy you could be here with us in this truly celebratory moment.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. I really feel honored to be here and to be included in this discussion. I'm really in awe of everything that you folks have accomplished here in Merrimack, and I feel like I've made new friends, and I'm really excited to be locking arms with you and trying to push this forward. And I'm thrilled to be here for the EPA announcement. It's fabulous news, and it's going to change a lot of lives. The definition of insanity is to just keep doing the same thing and having the same result. And the insanity is to keep using products that have PFAS in them, which we know are so harmful. The result is the horrible spread of PFAS contamination that we're trying to correct through great expenditure of funds, healthcare damages, and many other things. So, Laureen did mention that I'm involved with solid waste. The way I started to come to this issue is learning a lot about the really toxic landfill leachate. And if you track the source of the leachate, you come back to consumer products. You come back to the things that we're throwing away. And then much of what goes into the landfill, into the leachate, ends up in wastewater. A lot is released into our surface and groundwaters, and then you're back to drinking water, and there's a huge cycle that goes on and on. So to stop the insanity, you have to stop using the product, and to stop using PFAS, you have to, encourage manufacturers to stop using PFAS in the products that they subsequently sell to us. There's so much education that still needs to be done about PFAS. To us, we probably dream it. I'm now dreaming about it like you guys. But a lot of people still don't understand the health effects and how widespread the contamination is. The bill that I've introduced, HB 1669, we've got a big vote tomorrow. I'm really hoping that it passes the House. It would stop the use of a variety of consumer products some which I've identified because they bear a huge PFAS load in our landfill and then subsequently in the leachate, but others which are identified as some of the primary sources of direct exposure to us. The definition that I have of PFAS has gotten a lot of focus. It is broad, but how do you stop the proliferation of PFAS if you don't broadly define the entity that you're trying to prevent, so you can then ban more products that have the chemical in it? So the things that are included in this bill are food packaging, cosmetics, products, juvenile products. There are so many juvenile products that are sold for our most vulnerable kids 12 and under. It gets you a little choked up when you think about it. Carpets have a huge PFAS load, but it's also where our children play and crawl in that lower airspace. Feminine hygiene products, that's direct exposure, and none of the PFAS that are in these consumer products are useful. They may be more convenient for us. They may ensure that the spaghetti we drop doesn't stain our rug as badly as it might otherwise, but we don't really need them. So why should we continue to use the PFAS that are in these products? And if we stop using PFAS at the source, industrial releases are because things like at Saint-Gobain were being produced with PFAS on them. We just need to stop it at its source. And that way, our water, our air, our soil, and our health and the world can only benefit. And I haven't included, obviously, every product that's being made with PFAS that we use in this bill, but I think it would be a really good place for us all to start. So I encourage my colleagues, I know you will, to support HB 1649 tomorrow on the floor. I hope to bring it to the Senate, and that we have a really good hearing and reception there, and we can move it on to the governor. So again, I appreciate the support of my Merrimack colleagues. I really appreciate being invited here. I hope soon the EPA will start to take action to ban more products that have PFAS in them, because the states can only do so much, and federal action is incredibly helpful. So thank you again, and let's keep the momentum going.
Yes, let's keep the momentum going. That's very exciting. One of the things that we have all but hounded our federal delegation about is the concept of loopholes and exemptions. Knowing what we know about our polluter, we've figured out, how this is done. How do they get away with this? Why isn't this on the list of Turi, for example, because they use PTFE, which comes from North Carolina. It isn't individual PFAS, thus it doesn't get listed. So lots of issues. I think I want you to know in closing, before I open this up to comments, that our main exposure besides PFOA, as Dawn will nod and say, is the C3s to C6s, the PFCAs, the PFBA, the PFHPA, the PFDA, the PFHXA, and the other one. Well, so those are there at higher levels than the other legacy chemicals that we're just starting to regulate. So think about that. To protect health, we need to say, what is our true exposure? What do we know about these chemicals? No one is going to tell us they're safer. You're not going to tell us this. I know you're not. So this is a huge concern. We cannot be the only community with this issue. They break through before PFOA, so remediation has to be designed to consider them. And as of yet in policy, they're not really on the radar like I would like them to be. And all of us here who know this. So that's my little closing bleep for you. And I want to also take a moment to shout out to Dana, who's sitting over there. Dana comes from an organization called Slingshot. Doesn't that sound cool? It's like, we are the Davy and Goliath story. So Andrea Miko from Pease and myself in 2017 at a Boston conference, founded, in hearing some stories from New York and Michigan, we said, we need to get together. We have federal needs that are immense and everywhere. So we co-founded the National PFAS Contamination Coalition, and after tossing around at lunch, kind of came up with the name. We expanded to communities that are impacted by PFAS in 30 states, and well, you know this, we've become very involved in federal policy so we don't burn each other out, and our states can only do so much. We need the backup of the federal government. So Dana refers to herself as the cat wrangler, basically, because when you have all these community, advocates who are very passionate about what's happening and even alarmed over what's happening, we need someone to help us and co-facilitate and kind of keep us productive and on track. So I want to give a huge shout out. She's here today. She helped me pull some details of this together, because what in life ever prepared me for this? So that being said, we're going to open this up to the microphone, which allows you to come up and ask a question or make a comment. Please state who would you like that question to go to. If it's a general comment, great. And I think you have to be good about making sure you're speaking into the microphone, but it is on. Thank you.
Ready?
Oh, I have to facilitate this. That's right. Wolfram von Schoen,
No.
Water Commissioner.
Thank you. Yeah, Wolfram von Schoen. More of a general comment. First of all, thank you for everybody that has, worked on this for years. And personally, I think a lot of people here in town and here in the room got into offices and got politically engaged because of this PFAS mess. And I guess good things can come out of bad things. I really wanted to send one message out about feasibility that Commissioner Chair Don Provencio already mentioned. MBD has done all of this at or below New Hampshire average water rates. Right? So when we talk about feasibility, this is not just a simple matter of throwing infinite money at it. If it's done right, it can be done reasonably expensive. It's never cheap, but it's not like we're just, again, we're at or below New Hampshire water rate. Granted, that information is about a year old, but the projections were still looking into the future, into current times. So, and the New Hampshire average rate went up anyways, right? So it's not like it stayed on the level it was last year. So for sure, we are doing this at a cost that is manageable. It's a signal that needs to be heard. This is not as much of a dramatic increase in rates as people might think it is, as bad as it is. Thank you very much.
Chuck Mower, 4 Depot Street. It's quite an august body here today. Great work has been accomplished by all of you, as we heard testimony to. But again, I don't want anybody to think that this is a victimless crime. I myself have been poisoned by my government on a couple of different occasions, including my local water company. My wife is one of the rare cases of myasthenia gravis that we believe has been caused by PFOAs that she consumed in the water. What has happened here has in fact been a tragedy, and the people that have persevered to try and respond positively, it has been painful for them. I know, as a general participant in my community and the activities that we pursue, it is painful. When we win, we don't win with a bang. We win with a whimper. And these days, the chemical industries are outpacing us 1,000-fold. If we think that we're getting our hands on one thing, there are another 1,000 things to worry about. And so, yes, we need not just education, but we need more regulation. We need more analysis and evaluation, and all of those things that constitute responsible action on the part of our governing bodies to, quite frankly, ruthless capitalism, where their point is to make as much money as they can, and you are our only line of defense for the common interest. I would remind everyone that it's not just us that needs clean water, but all of the flora and fauna that occupy our landscape alongside us need that as well. And 500,000 people depend upon water for consumption from the Merrimack River. And the pathway is clear for PFOAs to travel down into Massachusetts and an unknown distance. And so, yes, we encourage everyone to do more and more and more, because what you've done is tremendous. But as you have said, it is by no means the end of the story. So I applaud you all to keep working. Now, on a local level, I would like to suggest that one of the things that can happen to help protect our groundwater, of course, we have a sewage system that manages to evaluate the content of the chemical makeup and so forth that we can readily respond to when we see an incident. But on groundwater, we do not. There was a time when the town of Merrimack inspected and approved from the building department our septic systems. That is no longer the case. It has been a question amongst the planning board and zoning board members, of which I participate. And I think it's imperative that the town of Merrimack put back in place a protocol for inspecting and approving septic systems for the town of Merrimack. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is it Mr. Mower? Did I get that? Yes. I just want to acknowledge, your articulation of the pain that many people are going through, and I want to also honor the comments that you've made here describing your personal experience, because, of course, that's what this is all about, right? Families, people being concerned, seeing their loved ones getting sick, worrying about what you give to your kid to drink, or whether I can mix my water in with from my tap into formula, right? So thank you for putting this on a very personal level, because that's what this is all about. And I know that I do, and my colleagues back in the regional office and the colleagues I work with at headquarters, this is what we devote our lives to, our careers to, is to working in a way that addresses those kinds of concerns so that people avoid what you've had to go through. So again, I just applaud that you've come up and spoken your piece. And I know that everybody here and at EPA, we're committed to doing all the hard work that we know that we're going to have to keep on doing. This is just one step in a really long journey that we're taking, so thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tim Dutton. I'm actually here for my father on Wire Road. He's been on bottled water about 5 years now. 2 years ago, they came in, the state came in, and some private group came in to talk about either a filtration system or town water. A year and a half ago, they said they were going to be there in 6 months, and then 6 months later, and then a year later. Now it's the springtime. It's been a year and a half, I believe, since we've heard anything back on when they're going to tie into either MVD or a filtration system. And he's getting a little antsy on, because we aren't getting the answers we were trying to find out. So I guess that's why I'm asking the questions as to when there might be a water fix for his house, and not just that house, but the others that are trying to wait as well. Thank you.
I think you're referring to an area that is outside of the responsibility of St. Gobain, and it's the responsibility of us to solve that problem, right? They're not in the consent decree area, or are they?
They are. He's about 2 miles or so from MVD. He had a very high concentration, and he is in that zone because he's getting the bottled water as well too.
Okay, all right. So Nancy can follow up on that.
Thank you. I think what Mr. Dutton is sharing is not atypical at all for a number of homeowners here in Merrimack. And I know we've had this discussion, and in the past, the challenge has been we've reached out to DES. DES has a liaison who deals with this sort of issue, and often what we've heard is that DES makes an expectation of St. Gobain, and there are delays. There are either St. Gobain challenges a particular responsibility for a particular impacted well, or there are delays in whether it's due to weather or whatever for getting access to public water in terms of lines, water lines, public water lines. So this is the story, and I think that Mr. Dutton exemplifies exactly the frustration for citizens that not only have we had unknown years of exposure, once that people become aware that they have been exposed, and then time passes, finally agreements are made, and we're assured that, okay, there will be a response in terms of remediation and filtration, and we are still, we're over 8 years, and his dad is still waiting for connection to safe drinking water. So I apologize on behalf of our state, and I hear you. I'll again reached out to DES. I know I've reached out before, and
Yes.
they've given us information, but again, this is the situation. There are advocates working for this. We're doing the right things, and we're all still waiting.
Did you want to add to that, Wendy?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I'm also, my family is one of those families that has been living on bottled water for the last 5 years. Every drink of water I drink, every ounce of water that I cook with comes from plastic, which is not good either.
Correct.
We've also, like your dad, we've been promised that we will have public water connection. Keeps getting bumped out, keeps getting bumped out. I'm just here to say that I share your dad's frustration.
Thank you. Just one last statement. These homes that are under this water issue, I would believe it's difficult to try and sell the house if they're on bottled water and no time frame on when they may get the water. We may be in that time frame as well too. So it's apparent that this gets looked at very soon. Thank you.
Thank you. In addition to the homes such as yours that are in limbo, I want people to know that there are over 400 homes that the state has said are absolutely the responsibility of St. Gobain that they continue to contest. So there are 400 homes in this area that should be well within the remediation boundaries, and they are in beyond limbo. They're not even on the water list. It's wrong.
Next up. Hi, my name is Charles LaFond. I'm a 41-year resident of Merrimack. I recently ran in the town council election. I've been a follower of PFAS and pollution and such for a long time. My original career, I worked at AT&T, Bell Laboratories down in North Andover, Mass. And for those of you that don't know it, we did a lot of semiconductor research and design. Basically, the thing your phone company used to bring you was the stuff you never had. And the thing is that when we developed semiconductors and stuff, we never did that before. And we knew we had to be in closed systems, and we knew we had to take special precautions. But before I took over the area, it was a mess. We had leaks everywhere. And when you have trico leaks into the ground, trust me, there's nothing that, well, I take it back. We had some gas additive over here at the mobile station that made it into groundwater at super record speed. But trike, methylene chloride, methylchloroform, I'll tell you, dudes, In the 80s, I was your champion. I helped him come up with his laws. I helped OSHA come up with safety procedures. I helped develop the lens instrumentation. I'm a metrology specialist by heart. The U.S. government trained me right off the bat to be a metrology specialist. And what that means is that I know measurements. I know how to study them. I know when we have false measurements. I know when we have measurement errors. I know when we are looking at something and our lens is too tight and we're looking at something like PFAS and we take our eye off the ball, or as 4 women from Manitoba told me, I love this saying, we lift our stick up off the ice. We get our head out of the game. And we lose it. We got to keep our stick on the ice. We got to keep our head in the game. And where I'm getting at with this, and I'm going to finish this really quick, there are 4 basic principles to successful management or projects or anything, and I would like you all to take this to heart. The first thing is when you all come together, it better be epic. You better have a mission. It better be something good. Maybe it's ending oppression. Maybe it's helping the town of Merrimack, where everybody, including myself, has a kidney problem. That doesn't happen overnight, and that doesn't happen with a single incident, and it doesn't happen with one company. Somebody told me yesterday, well, let me go back to these 4 basic principles before I forget, because these would be on the wall if I ever win. Okay? The first basic principle is you better have a cause. It better be noble. It better be good. It better end and alleviate the suffering. The second item, do no harm. You've heard that before. Whatever you're doing, you can't hurt something else. There's no acceptable loss. And the thing is that we live in a homeopathic society. And I'm just going to end it right there with that. We don't live in a holistic society. I heard the word holistic used a lot. I consider myself holistic. Okay? And the next thing is you always have to be open and honest. If you're in a system or a program or something where you can't be open and honest, where you can't tell everybody what's going on, you got to really reevaluate where you are and what is going on. And the very last thing, and I've tried to clean this up and apologize, don't do stupid shit. You know what it is. You've done it. You've done it in the past. People have done it together. Don't do it. And if you find out you're doing it, don't double down. Because when I went to work at Lucent, I had to alleviate years of stupid shit. And I tell you, everybody that was there before me had the best intention. The framework was all there to do it right. Nobody had the ambition to do it right. Because it wasn't, you weren't going to get a raise. You weren't going to get anything. You know what drove me one day? I had a guy right after I got to be a manager. He pulled me to the side. We went over to some spray etchers by the window. First thing in the morning, sun coming through. And you know what he showed me? He showed me all the overspray coming out of the spray etchers. And the little old ladies walking by, doing their process checks, getting showered. And all these people working in the area without any kind of breathing. And they had exhaust vents, but nothing was contained. It just flowed all over the room. And he said to me, he says, if you really care, we're all going to die. And it's going to be because of you. If you really care, you'll do something. You'll know what it is.
If you really care, you'll do something. That's a great phrase. Thank you.
Yeah, but
Thank you.
one last thing.
I just want to get through 3 more people so we're a little bit over
Okay,
schedule.
so somewhere along the line, we've opened up the town landfill again. We've got wastewater. We've got somebody at wastewater who's working with Clean Harbors, who is in charge of turning the most toxic shit from New England to holy shit. And I have got a report from people living around the town landfill that our town trucks are taking this holy shit from our waste treatment plant and bringing it out to the Old Town landfill and dumping it out there. And the Old Town landfill is one of the lowest places in town. It's right above the Merrimack Lake, which is right underground, which is where most of you get your water. That's 200, 300 feet down. That's where you get it. And even where I am out at Parker Well, that thing goes down 600, 700 feet. Guess where they're at? They're out on the edge of the Merrimack Lake on an artesianal flow. And guess where they're dumping that crap? They're dumping that crap right out by the Bedford line, over by the Amherst area, because that whole area over there was once a lake. So when you pollute that one spot, when you stack stuff from all around New England, from Clean Harbors, right there, and I know, it's been treated. It's now holy shit, it's good. But I'm telling you, a guy came to me while I was campaigning. He just put in a great big filtering system in his basement. And it's got holes all over it, and the metal's getting eaten out. And it's not getting eaten out by PFAS. I don't know what it's getting eaten out by, but he just came to me yesterday, and he told me he's basically without water. We just basically killed him. And now he's got to arrange for a water line to come in. He's got to arrange for something else. He's telling me his neighbor, who's got a well 600 feet down, already had PFAS before they put the filter in. His well at 250, 300 didn't have PFAS.
Charles, aquifer protection is really important, and we will have continued discussions on this.
Thanks.
I know. Time. That's it.
My last election. Thanks. Bye.
Janine Notter.
Hi, I'm Representative Janine Notter. Representative Evil's comments reminded me that 20 years ago I went to a workshop called The Toxic World That We Live In, and PFAS was not in our vocabulary back then, but she mentioned buying a natural fiber carpet for her children's playroom, and it had spaghetti sauce on it because it wouldn't wash out because it didn't have the chemicals on there. So thank you for that. Her advice back then was, in this toxic world we live in, there's chemicals everywhere. Health starts by what we put in our body, and I've always been wary of tap water and have been drinking bottled water for as long as I can remember. And I just wanted to add a word of thanks to our town council of 2016, who wasted no time to investigate the scope of the PFAS issue and its impact on our town. And I also wanted to remember our late speaker, Dick Hinch, who worked behind the scenes to address the water issue. And I was at some of those meetings, and it didn't get media attention, but there were a lot of people involved in the group effort, and everyone deserves a word of thanks. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. Representative Megan Murray. I represent the town of Amherst and Milford, and I'm also the vice chair of Hillsborough County Delegation. And I want to just look around the room and mention how many different folks are here from all sorts of different areas, whether it's well water commissions that I know some serve on, to residents here. And as a mom of 3 young kids, the town of Amherst has also dealt with PFAS issues that were from legacy chemicals that were leaching into well water area from behind the fire department, as well as some other areas in town from industrial polluters. And I agree with Representative Ebel, when we're talking about with the products that our children are using every day, we have got to take a serious look at, there's nonstick everything in kid stuff. I have 3 kids that are, 3rd grade all the way up until tomorrow. My son will be 14. And the amount of things that I have to scrutinize through an app to try and look at what's there, or an endocrine disruptor, or any of those types of things, it's challenging. So anything the department and the agency can do, I think we look to you for. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Heather Robitaille. I just wanted to express my heartfelt appreciation to Laureen, Representative Murphy, Representative Thomas, Representative Rung, and the other water warriors who really took up this charge and brought education and awareness to our town, to our government, and are bringing it at the federal level. To Chuck's point, I also just want to say this isn't over. It's a step forward. It's the right thing to do, but we can't let up. As a community, we need to keep putting pressure on our government to do the right things, to hold polluters accountable, and to protect our citizens, protect our children, and protect our future. Thank you.
Thank you, Laureen, and members of the panel, those in the audience and those at home. I'm Maureen Mooney, for the record, state representative, one of 8 representing the town of Merrimack, also a member of the PFAS Commission, established by Representative Murphy. Just want to further highlight the widespread issue that PFAS has become in Concord. PFAS bills over the past 4 years in the New Hampshire House alone have gone to the House Commerce Committee, the House Committee on Health and Human Services, Resources, Recreation and Development, Environment and Agriculture, and, last but certainly not least, House Finance Committee that I serve on with Representative Ebel. These things cost money. And Representative Murphy, you brought up the feasibility report that was in the budget last year, passed on a voice vote, further highlights how this issue is becoming widespread. The advancement of education is working, but it takes bipartisanship, takes collaboration, and that's happening too. So thank you all.
Thank you, Representative Muni, and thank you so much. It's been wonderful working with you, especially on the financial and nuts and bolts part of it. That's not my strength. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? I think we can probably wrap up at this point. I just want to thank, Administrator Cash once again and say, as you can hear, this touches a lot of aspects. And I just want to say that after 8 years, in the very beginning of this, there were these moms in town who were then joined by these dads in town. And what we knew is we have this thing called exposure, and we also could see the outcome. But here they were. What we're doing now with these MCLs is we're putting health science in this. We're bringing exposure and outcome together. It's kind of scary, but we need to do this because this is what it's all about. Thank you.